All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our RBT exam practice series. We're going to the next set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack and practice exams. As always, when you pass, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Each night, Antonio fills a tea kettle with water. He places the kettle on the electric base and sets the setting to boil. Once the water hits 212 degrees, the kettle beeps 3 times. Antonio then pours the water into his teacup and drinks his tea. What is the SD for pouring water into the teacup? All right, the SD, or the discriminative stimuli. 1, it's an antecedent, and 2, it's going to evoke a certain response. And so typically when you're looking for the SD, you're looking for what's coming right before the response. So in this case, the response is pouring water into the teacup. So let's break down Antonio's chain. He fills the tea kettle with water. He places the kettle on the base, sets the setting to boil. So each one of these items are discrete parts of this chain, so to speak. And so we're looking for what part comes right before pouring the water. We're not there yet, right? So once the water hits 212 degrees, the kettle beeps 3 times. Once the kettle beeps 3 times, what does Antonio do? Well, he pours the water into his teacup because the kettle beeping 3 times signals to Antonio that now reinforcement is available for pouring water into his teacup because the water is now hot enough for him to drink his tea. So the SD evoking pouring water into teacup is the kettle beeping 3 times. A lot of these questions, like this one, you can predict the answer before you even get to the answer choices, and that's what you should be trying to do. You do all your work in the question, don't even read the answer choices yet, understand the question, try to make a prediction, and then move on. So the SD for pouring water is what? A, filling the kettle with water. Well, that's the first thing he does way before pouring the water into the cup. The water hitting 212 degrees, if there was no beeping, then the water hitting 212 degrees is likely the SD. But there is a beep letting Antonio know now it's time to pour the water. Only when the kettle beeps does Antonio pour the water, making the kettle beeping 3 times the SD. Drinking the tea is the consequence for pouring the water. The SD is an antecedent, so drinking the tea is not going to be our SD. The SD for pouring water is the kettle beeping 3 times. Wilson and his brother think it's funny to bark at each other like dogs. They do it even though it annoys their parents and their sister. Today, Wilson barked at his teacher and was sent to detention. What does Wilson's behavior most represent? So be careful here. Let's break this question down. 1, what is the question asking? Well, they're asking about Wilson's behavior, right? So we're looking at Wilson's behavior. We know Wilson and his brother bark at each other like dogs because they think it's funny, and it annoys their parents and sister. Well, today, what did Wilson do? He barked at his teacher and was sent to detention. What has Wilson done? Well, he's taken this behavior of barking like a dog at his brother because he thinks it's funny and annoys their parents and sister. He's now doing it at school to his teacher, which, given he got sent to detention, is not okay. It's the wrong time for the response. He's doing it too much at inappropriate times in inappropriate situations. So what do we call it when a response occurs too often or at inappropriate times? A, generalization. So Wilson has generalized the behavior. However, we're looking for the best answer. Most represent. So never just read one answer choice. Read every single answer choice because you might have a better answer further along. If we look at B, overgeneralization, that's a better answer than just generalization. Not only has the barking generalized, it's overgeneralized. Overgeneralization occurs when the behavior happens too often or at the wrong time. In this case, Wilson should not be barking at his teacher under any circumstances. His behavior has generalized, or I should say, overgeneralized to school. That's a problem. C, maintenance. Maintenance You should only pick maintenance if the skill was taught and the teaching stops. There's no mention of teaching here, so we can't pick maintenance. We don't know where this response came from. The best answer is overgeneralization. Yes, the behavior generalized, but it is happening too often now. It's happening in the wrong places. It's overgeneralized. Deprivation of a reinforcer would most likely have what type of effect for your client? Keyword here, deprivation. What do we mean by deprivation? And specifically, deprivation of a reinforcer. Well, when we talk about deprivation, we mean something is either being withheld or you're not getting enough of something. You're deprived of something. So if you're deprived of a reinforcer, that means you're not getting the reinforcer. If the client is deprived of a reinforcer, they're not getting the reinforcer. What does deprivation lead to? Well, let's think about, let's say your favorite food is pizza. If you don't get pizza for a month, you are likely to start wanting pizza more and more the longer you don't get it. And the motivation to engage in the behavior to get pizza increases because you're deprived of that pizza. So in this case, if the client is deprived of the reinforcer, the value of that reinforcer goes up. And since the value of the reinforcer goes up, they're more likely to engage in behavior to gain access to the reinforcer. Let's look at A, an increase in value for the reinforcer. Absolutely. The longer it goes without getting, the client goes without getting this reinforcer, the higher the value. And since the value is higher, there's going to be an increase in behavior to gain the reinforcer. A looks pretty good. B, a decrease in value for the reinforcer. Well, the value is not going to decrease with deprivation. And remember, deprivation and satiation are related to motivating operation. So this is a motivating operation question. It's a little more challenging. That's okay. Spend some time on it, understand it. So the value is not decreasing for the reinforcer through deprivation. C, an increase in value for the reinforcer, yes. And a decrease in behavior to gain the reinforcer. Well, no. If the value is increased, it's more than likely that the behavior is going to increase to gain that reinforcer. And then D, a decrease in value for the reinforcer. No. A decrease in behavior to gain the reinforcer. No. Satiation is much more likely with D. In this case, deprivation of the reinforcer would likely lead to an increase in value for the reinforcer and an increase in behavior to gain the reinforcer. Following an interview with parents, your supervisor asks you to help them with a procedure which will help identify the function of a behavior. The supervisor instructs you to provide the client with a task demand, and if the client attempts to escape, you should allow them to escape. What type of assessment is this? Now, this is interesting, right? We're looking at the type of assessment, and in this case, you're told to give the client a task demand. If the client attempts to escape, you're actually supposed to allow them to escape, essentially reinforcing the behavior. That's kind of an issue, right? Except in this particular assessment. Now, what are we trying to do here? Well, we're trying to identify the function of a behavior. Out of your assessments, indirect assessments, direct assessments like ABC narrative recording and event recording, and functional analysis, which one is best at identifying the function? Well, a functional analysis. And as an RBT, you're never going to conduct a functional analysis alone, but you're very likely going to assist on those. So if you ever see a situation where you're actually manipulating antecedents and consequences, in this case, the task demand, and then allowing them to escape, that's going to be a functional analysis. So an indirect assessment, A, those are surveys, interviews. We're not actually working with the client. We're not observing the client's behavior. Obviously, we're doing both here. It is an indirect. ABC narrative recording, you're keeping an ongoing log of antecedents and consequences. Well, that's not what you're doing here because you're actually manipulating the antecedents and consequences. You're providing the task demand, and based on the client's behavior, you're giving the consequence. If they want to escape, you allow them to escape. This is a functional analysis. Reinforcer assessment, we're not assessing reinforcers here. D is out. Now, functional analysis, again, as an RBT, you're never going to do these alone, but be familiar with them. A functional analysis is when you are actually manipulating antecedents and consequences in order to identify the function of a behavior. Which of the following answer choices represents a functionally equivalent behavior for attention-based off-task behavior? Keyword here is, or keywords are functionally equivalent. What do we mean by functionally equivalent? Well, let's start with differential reinforcement, right? When we use differential reinforcement, we're putting certain behaviors on extinction and reinforcing other behaviors. We're trying to find different ways for the person to act, right? And so when we're decreasing behavior, we've got to put a new behavior in its place because behavior serves functions. So whenever you decrease a behavior, you need another behavior that's going to meet the same function, which we call functionally equivalent. So if our behavior is attention-based, we need a behavior that is also attention-based. So A, the learner asking for a break. Well, if the learner is asking for a break for off-task behavior, they're trying to likely escape, right? Escape and attention, two different functions. B, the learner asking if the teacher or therapist would work on the task with them. Okay, the learner asking if they can have somebody work with them. Well, now somebody's going to be giving them constant attention through the task. B looks pretty good, right? B is functionally equivalent. And not only that, now they're going to be on task. B looks like a good answer. Read all of your answer choices. C, the learner completing the worksheet alone in their room. Well, being alone is not going to give them attention. That's not functionally equivalent. And then D, the learner playing with a toy while completing the task. Playing with a toy, they're playing with a tangible, they're not getting attention. The best answer that most represents attention-based behavior is going to be B, the learner asking if the teacher or therapist would work on a task with them. So whenever you're looking for a functionally equivalent behavior, look for a behavior that matches the function of the old behavior. A couple is redoing their kitchen and are looking at different types of cabinets. They open a magazine which has 9 different options. The wife tells her husband to pick his favorite, and then she'll pick her favorite, and they'll go back and forth until no cabinets are left. What type of preference assessment does this most resemble? Preference assessment questions. The first thing you always ask yourself, how many stimuli am I assessing at once? If it's one at once, one at a time, it's likely a single choice. If it's 2 at a time, it's likely a forced choice. If it's 3 or more all at once, it's likely multiple stimulus. And if it's just in the natural environment, it's free operant. In this case, how many stimuli? Well, in the magazine, it has 9 options. So the couple has 9 options to choose from. So we're thinking multiple stimulus here. Now, with replacement or without. Multiple stimulus with replacement means whatever item is chosen in the array is put back and the other items are replaced. In this case, with 9 options, you would pick one item and replace the other 8. So in this case, the wife tells her husband to pick his favorite, and then she'll pick her favorite, and they go back and forth until no cabinets are left. Well, since no cabinets are left, that tells us they're not replacing anything, which means this has to be a multiple stimulus without replacement. It's not forced choice because we're doing more than 2 at a time. It's not free operant because it's a contrived number of options and they're picking and choosing. It's not with replacement because we're not replacing anything. So it has to be multiple stimulus without replacement. And then which of the following answer choices is true about consequences, ending on an easy one? We know our consequences, the 3 main types of consequences: reinforcement, extinction, and punishment. So we're looking for something that is true about consequences. A, punishment and extinction both work to reduce behavior. Well, that's true. Punishment and extinction are both reduction tactics, right? Punishment, you add or take away something to reduce behavior. Extinction, you withhold something to reduce behavior. A looks good. Let's read on. B, extinction is a type of punishment. We know that's not true. Don't make that mistake. C, all extinction involves planned ignoring. Well, not if it's tangible, right? Tangible involves not giving the item. That's a mistake a lot of people make. Just because you're using extinction doesn't mean you're using planned ignoring. And then D, punishment should only be used for self-injurious or dangerous behaviors. Well, not necessarily, right? Punishment is often our last choice, but it can be used in many, many situations. What is true is punishment and extinction both work to reduce behavior. Thank you for watching. Please check out ABA Exam Review for all of our study materials, btexamreview.com for a combo pack and practice exams. Like, subscribe, let us know when you pass, work hard, study hard. See you soon.